You too, Zerlina, and I really appreciate. And before we jump in, I just want to remind people that abortion is still legal in all 50 states right now, and that despite their damnedest to try to create all of these horrible, diabolical restrictions, it is still possible and legal to get abortion in Texas. And I'm very concerned because these laws are so intended to sow disinformation and chaos before we have time to rely on some of our backstops and our protests essentially to stop these horrible bans.
I mean, you said diabolical. In terms of this Texas law, one example that sticks out in terms of something bad, and it was highlighted by the Texas Tribune, is a provision that could help it evade legal challenges. Quote, instead of having the government enforce the law, the bill turns the reins over to private citizens who are newly empowered to sue abortion providers or, wait for it, anyone who helps someone get an abortion. How bad is this law? That feels like an overreach. Anyone can sue, even the person who gave you a couple $100 to go get an abortion.
Well, and it's also not just anyone in Texas. It's anyone from any state is able to sue you for creating access to abortion. What they're essentially saying here, right, is that they want to make these laws, but they don't want to be responsible. They don't want to be held accountable for enforcing them. And so, again, clearly designed to shame, intimidate providers, people driving their partners to a clinic to access abortion, like all of these things they're putting into question. So people are literally afraid to access abortion. I talked to one of my colleagues today in California who had a patient from Texas who Ubered from Texas to California to get access to abortion because they literally did not know what to do. And I think that is the intent of these laws, to create these unbelievable extra burdens onto patients who are seeking access in an effort just to essentially control our bodies.
So you mentioned at the top that, and this is true, abortion is legal in all 50 states, but access to abortion, it depends upon where you live in the country. So in terms of how things are right now, the state of things right now, in Mississippi, there's only one clinic left. So it's not like access to abortion is easy. Is it getting worse, or is it sort of the way it's been since 2010 with this concerted effort to restrict abortion access?
Well, look, I think the restrictions are certainly getting more intense. As you mentioned, there are upwards of 530 restrictions that we've seen just since the beginning of this year. And with the Supreme Court taking this particular case in Mississippi that the Center for Reproductive Rights has brought on behalf of Jackson Women's Health Organization, which is the last abortion provider in Mississippi, we are seeing now a full challenge to Roe. It literally goes to the heart of Roe. It goes to the heart of viability and the period in which we have been able to make decisions about our own bodies, and the court is stepping in to rule whether or not that is constitutional. And so, yes, I mean, I think what our reproductive justice partners have said all along is that Roe is the floor, right? It's a right that only depends if you have access. And what we are seeing is now additional restrictions that are being layered upon this right. And if something happens with this particular case in Mississippi next year, it will mean that many will have access and yet no right. And so that's the fight that we are fighting and gearing up for.
And one of the things we don't talk about enough is the role of state attorneys general in challenging unconstitutional abortion laws or any laws that are passed by legislatures. So in Oklahoma, we have Attorney General Mike Hunter acting in the interest of personal politics, urging the Supreme Court to take up the Mississippi abortion ban. But, there are alternative ways attorneys general can approach this issue. Should we be talking more about that and getting advocates and supporters of Roe to focus in on the importance of that role of attorney general in many of these states?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think attorneys general play an incredibly important role, and I'm really proud of DAGA, the Democratic Attorneys General Association, who decided that they would not endorse any attorney general that was not in support of access to abortion under Roe. And so, I think that they have choices, right, as we all do, in terms of pushing and supporting proactive legislation. And that's what we are seeing right now. Many states, I was in New Jersey today with Governor Phil Murphy and their state legislator leadership talking about how important it is to pass the Reproductive Freedom Act, because we know that in many states, we will have to, given what's happening right now, really push the boundaries to make sure that we are expanding as much access as we possibly can, knowing that there are a number of states that are already set to have these trigger laws, click with Roe being overturned potentially. And so, there is a lot of work that has to happen. This is going to be a state by state fight to make sure that we are focusing on constitutional amendments. We are making sure that we are, working as much as we can with our congressional partners as well to identify where there can be federal protections. And I think that, our attorneys general are going to play a really important role as the chief enforcers in each state to make sure that we're continuing to protect people who, again, are going to be traveling and needing to access abortion, because that's what we know is not going to happen. People will not stop seeking access. We saw it when they were trying to add these restrictions, these executive orders during COVID. People got in their cars. They drove 18 hours from Texas to Colorado, in some cases just to get access to medication abortion. They also had to take off work. They had to, put their kids in the car, put their parents in the car, to travel through a pandemic. And that is what the reality is going to be. And I think the more we talk about what that reality is, how it disproportionately impacts low-income people, people of color, trans, non-binary folks, that is really what the impact is here. And that's what the fight is.